Okay, in Tanya, we are in Perek Yudches, chapter 18, page 46 on the top, 76 at the bottom. Okay. We're going to start 2, 4, 6, 8, 9 lines to the bottom of the page. Okay, Al Rebbe is explaining in this Perek an additional way how it's very close. Again, last week there was no class, so let me just review quickly. In Perek Yud Zayin and before Perek Yud Zayin, Al Rebbe explained how can a Jew serve Hashem. So he says you can't awaken this open love and fear of Hashem in your heart, but you can stimulate intellectual fear and love of Hashem. And then in Perek Yudches, what we're learning now, Al Rebbe says, what happens if you can't even do that? You meditate and you can't even stimulate intellectual fear and love of Hashem. He says, don't worry about it. Why? You have a neshama. You're a child of Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. They were the Merkava. They were chariots, completely subjugated, subservient, nullified to Hashem. Automatically, whatever Hashem wanted, they did. And therefore, they gave over as inheritance to every single Jew who was either born Jew or converted halachically to Judaism. Every Jew has a neshama, which has within it all the 4 worlds of Atzilus, starting from Chochmah of Atzilus, which is the highest level, all the way down to Malchus of Asiya, which is the lowest level of the lowest world. He says like this, even if your neshama, and this is what we're in the middle of now, even if your neshama is the low level of a neshama, you're the world of Malchus Asiya. So seemingly I'm pretty low. He says, don't worry about it. Because the chain of the worlds, again, there's 4 worlds, spiritual worlds. Atzilus, Bria, Yetzira, and Asiya. And they are called Hishtalshelus. Hishtalshelus means a chain. What is the definition of a chain? Link, interlink, interlink, interlink. So there's 10 levels in each world. So Chochmah goes into Bina, into Das, into Chesed, into Malchus. Then the next world goes, so Malchus of Atzilus, it goes into Chochmah of Bria, 10 levels of Bria, 10 levels of Yetzirah, 10 levels of Asiya. When you have a golden chain, when you have a link chain, the top link is still connected to the bottom link, and the bottom link is still connected to the top link. Therefore, the lowest of the lowest neshama that could possibly be, Malchus of the world of Asiya, the lowest possible level, it's still connected to the highest level of Atzilus, which is the Chochmah Atzilus. And now the Rebbe is going to explain the existence of that low level is dependent on the higher level of Chochmah Atzilus. And therefore, every Jew has a connection to God. There is no such thing as an essential disconnected Jew. You could be disconnected in intellect and feelings. You could be disconnected in thought, speech, and action. But in essence, your neshama has this inheritance from Avraham Avinu, which has in it the highest level of Chochmah Atzilus, is giving life to the lowest of the lowest neshama. And we're going to see this inside. And he says, nevertheless, even though your neshama might be the lowest of the low, the fact that even the lowest level of the lowest world is from the 10 attributes of Kedusha, Kulam is composed of all of them. Gam Chochmah Da'asiyah Shebesecha, Lumulbesh Chochmah D'Malchus Da'Atzilus, Shebesecha Chochmah Da'Atzilus, Sheba Meir Ein Tzav Baruch Hu Mamish. And therefore, like this, the lowest world, which has 10 links, The lowest link is connected to the top link. Now, this top link is connected to the higher worlds, to the higher world, to the higher worlds. So, like we said before, the lowest link is still connected to the highest link, which is Chochmah Vatzilus, which is Sheba, that in this level of Chochmah Vatzilus, Meir Or Ein Sof Baruch Hu Mamish is shining the essence of Hashem. Kiriksiv, Hashem b'Chochmah Yosad Eretz. Hashem with Chochmah founded earth, meaning even in the level of Eretz, even in the lowest level, there's still the level of Chochmah. The Kulam b'Chochmah Asisa, and everything was made with Chochmah. Therefore, what's the Alter Rebbe saying? The lowest level is connected to the highest level. Therefore, the Nimtze comes out. Ki ein Tzav Baruch Hu Malo Bechinas Chochmah Shebenefesh Ha'adam. This infinite level of godliness dresses itself into the Chochmah of the Nefesh Ha'adam, Yia Mi Sheyia Mi Yisrael. Whoever it is, it doesn't matter. It's totally irrelevant who the person is. You are a Jew, you're a child of Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. You have this level of Kedusha in it. Some of the, there's a famous story with the Rebbe, a Hasidic Jew from other dynasties, came to the Rebbe and said, I love the philosophy of Chabad, but what I don't get is why is Chabad bringing closer the hippies and the schmippies and the non-frum people? Why do you care about them? They're not frum. So the Rebbe turned to him and he said the following. Let me ask you a question. If one of your Rebbe's children went off the path, would you try to bring them back? And this chassid said 100%. And the Rebbe said to him, why? Why would you bring him back? He's off. He said, what do you mean? He's a child of a Rebbe. He's a child of a holy person. We can't let him get lost. And the Rebbe turned to him, the Rebbe said, every single Jew is a child of Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Every Jew is a child of holy people. Why should we negate him more than you would negate your Rebbe's child? Every Jew, that's what the Rebbe is saying over here. Every Jew has within them this neshama. That in the neshama of the lowest person exists the level of Chochmah. And the Alter Rebbe says like this. And this level of Chochmah, which is the highest of the levels, which is in the level of Chochmah, spreads itself out throughout the entire nefesh, it gives it sustenance from head to toe. Like it says, HaChochmah techaya baleh. Chochmah, wisdom, gives life to those that have him. So therefore, the Rebbe says like this. Bottom line, the lowest Jew is still connected to Hashem. The lowest Jew is still connected to Hashem completely. And if that's the case, that level to reveal, you don't have to stimulate your intellect. All you have to say is, I'm a Jew, and therefore I'm connected. That doesn't give a person an excuse to not to be religious, say, well, I'm still a Jew, so I'm connected. Okay, because obviously that doesn't make sense. A child is still a child, whether they look at the parent, don't look at the parent, rebel, doesn't rebel, but you want to have a relationship of an open relationship that's a good relationship. That doesn't mean if you don't behave, you're not a child. You're still the child. But you like to have a good relationship with the parent. A Jew needs to have a good relationship with Hashem by keeping Torah mitzvahs. But here the Alter Rebbe is saying, no matter who you are, you have a neshama, and this neshama is chelek halakah mimala, part of God. So even though you might have a very, very low neshama, it doesn't matter. And on top of Page Chavdal, Dr. Rebbe says in the brackets an interesting thing. Ulu pa'amim, sometimes, mamshichin peishe Yisrael. Sometimes the Jewish sinners, through at the time of intimacy with their spouse, bring down neshamas gevayas ma'id, very lofty neshamas, shahoyu ba'amke haklipis, which were in the depths of evil, like it says in Sefer Gilgulim. And the Rebbe explains what the Rebbe says here is as follows. Hashem doesn't demand from a person more than the person could do. Hashem doesn't demand evil what evil can't do. Now, evil has a hold on the neshamas that fell into evil. Okay? But sometimes the evil forces will release that neshama from evil to a parent that are not religious to get that neshama to continue not keeping Torah and mitzvahs. So therefore, the evil forces that Rebbe explains will allow a neshama that's in evil, fell into evil, to be able to be born to Jewish sinners, but it's really a lofty neshama. And therefore, even though the parents were sinners, the lofty neshama could come to them as if it was super great neshama. And Kabbalah brings a proof of this. Rabbi Akiva's father, Akiva ben Yosef, he was not a great tzaddik. He was a convert, a proper convert. But he wasn't a lofty person. And yet Rabbi Akiva's neshama was so super lofty. And who was he born to? A simple Jew, a simple convert. You have great neshamas, for instance, the neshama of Esav, the neshama of Kairach, the neshama of the Shusterman Torah speaks about. These are neshamas of super lofty level. And they fell very low, because the higher the thing, the lower it falls. And they fell into the depths of evil. And those neshamas really come from a very lofty place. In fact, like we learned many times in Chassidus, Esav's neshama came from a higher place than Yaakov's neshama. Esav comes to the world of Tikkun. Yaakov comes to the world of Esav comes from Tehu. Yaakov comes from the world of Tikkun. Esav's neshama is much greater than Yaakov Avinu. But it fell down, all the way down into total evil. And Yaakov's neshama didn't. Therefore, the Alter Rebbe is explaining, okay? And now he's taking it to another level. Every neshama, therefore, has the level of chachma within God, because every neshama comes down from heaven. It's a part of God. It's the chain of the world. It just comes next link, all the way to the bottom link. The bottom link is still connected to the top link. And therefore, it's a part of Hashem. Now, page Chavdal, third line. Hine ha-chachma imaker ha-seichel v'havana. Chachma is the origin of seichel. Seichel begins from chachma. V'lamayla mi-habina, and therefore it's higher than bina, understanding. Shu'avanas ha-seichel v'hasagasei, which is already understanding. We learned already before, Chachma and Bina is like father and mother. We learned the Yud is Chachma, the Hey is Bina, the Yud is masculine, the Hey is feminine. What is Chachma? Now, the Rebbe explained at the end of Perek Gimel. Chachma means when you all of a sudden think, and you get a brainstorm, you get a flash, a spark of an idea in your head. There's no width, length, or depth to it. You get a brainstorm. When you take that brainstorm and you broaden it you start thinking about it, learning about it, meditating into it, that becomes bina, then becomes understanding. Chokhmah is the source of seichel, but it's not understanding yet. Chokhmah doesn't understand. It's a spark of a flash. There's no understanding yet. I'll give you another example. You see something, an immediate, in Yiddish the word is, you take a blick. You take a quick glance at something, a picture. You have the general picture, but you don't have the details formulated in your head yet. That's the level of Chokhmah. Chokhmah is what causes Bina to happen. Therefore, in childbearing, and the reason why it's in childbearing like that is because that's the way it's in the spiritual realms. The father gives a little seed, the brainstorm, the flash, the spark, and then the mother takes that spark and broadens it through the 9 months of pregnancy to create a total baby. So from one side, Chokhmah, and here the Alter Rebbe is going to say, the Chokhmah is really higher than Seichel. Chokhmah is not, Seichel means to understand. Understanding begins in Bina. Bina means you understand it. Chokhmah is koyach ma, it's like, it's a flash, it's a spark. It's not something concrete yet. And therefore he says, Chokhmah, he lamayla mehavana v'hasaga. Chokhmah is above understanding. It's the flash. And it's the source of Seichel. That's why Chokhmah is called Koyach Ma. A power of what? Ma means, what is it? It's nothingness. Shuma she'ena musig u'muvan, which is something which is not understood. Ve'ena nitbes b'asoga adayin, and it's not grasped yet. You don't understand it yet. Lochem islabish ba'ord ein sof baruch hu the last machshava tvise beklal. And therefore, Chokhmah is a vehicle and a vessel for godliness. And let me stop here and elaborate on this. God can only rest on something which is subservient to him. Something which is full of themselves has no room for God. The Gemara uses the expression about this. Kli mole eina machzik, kli reikon machzik. An empty vessel you could put something into. A full vessel you can't put anything into. That's why the Gemara says in the beginning of Seita, terrible things about haughtiness and gaiva. And the Gemara says the expression, Ein ani v'hu yechelim lodot. Hashem says, I cannot coexist with a haughty person. Why not? Very simple. If you're full of yourself, there's no room for God. What is the keli for godliness? Bittul. Nothingness. Subjugation. Subservience. Chokhmah is that level of bittul. Koyach ma, like Moshe Rabbeinu said, v'nachnu, we're nothing. What are we? Bina is already understanding. That's where I come into play. I understand it. I understand it this way and that way and deeper and not so deep. Bina is already something yesh. It's already something existing. It's something tangible. That is not a keli for godliness. The reason why the first of all the spheres is the level of the 10 attributes is called Chokhmah. Why is Chokhmah the first level? Because that's the level where God rests. Because it's bottle, it's bittul, it's subservient, it's non-existent. It's koyach. What is it? Therefore, Chokhmah is where God reveals himself. So if you want to know what level of the neshama does Hashem reveal himself into, it's the level of Chokhmah, because Chokhmah is bittul. Once you go into understanding, or especially more so when you go into midas, I love, I fear. The Alter Rebbe says in Tanya later, Even a tzaddik gomer, the oyev Hashem ba'ava b'tanugim. Now the Rebbe says the greatest tzaddik who loves Hashem with the highest level of love is still, he says the expression, yesh mi sha'oyev. He's an entity that loves. I love God. Yeah, it's better than loving pizza. I love God, but there's an I that's loving. And even in understanding and being a way, understand something properly, there's me involved in it. Why are most intellectual people very haughty? Because I'm better than you, because I understand more than you, and I know more than you. Understanding causes gaiva. Chochmah, though, is the initial nothingness. And therefore, the Alter Rebbe says, where does God reveal himself? And he says, it comes into the level of Chochmah, the less machshava tfisi beklal. Because in godliness, we say in Pasuk Chalil, less machshava tfisi beklal, no mind can grasp Hashem. So if a mind cannot grasp Hashem, Hashem can't come into Bina. Bina is a level of grasping. Bina is the level of understanding. We can't understand Hashem. So Hashem can't come into the level of understanding. Where does Hashem come into? In the level above understanding. What is that? Chochmah. And then he says like this, Lochein kol Yisrael. Therefore, every single Jew, afilu anoshim amehad, it's because in the old times women didn't learn Torah, they were ignorant in knowledge of Torah, or the illiterates. They maminim b'Hashem, believe in God. In fact, children believe in God because they don't have understanding more than the adults do. There are many people in Yiddishkeit, in teachers, educators in Yiddishkeit, and many of them were from, by the way. Their theory was, and their style of chinuch was, you should not teach the little kids the miracles that happened in Chumash. There was a very powerful shita in education, that you don't teach kids story Kriyas Yamsuf and this and all the miracles that happened. Why? The kids don't believe it. They're not going to understand it. They don't believe it. And the Rebbe and the Frierdiker Rebbe were screaming, on the contrary. The Amunah is more by the children because they don't understand more than it is by the intellectuals. And therefore that the foundation of Amunah is by them. And he says, Shel Amunah hi l'mayla min hadas v'hasaga. Belief is above knowledge. There's an expression in Chassidus, obviously I'm saying it in English. Emunah begins where Seichel ends. Something you understand, you don't have to believe it. You understand it. Belief is what you don't understand. So where does belief start? Where your understanding ends. So if you have little understanding, your belief begins much lower down. The Amunah begins much lower down. And he says an interesting statement. Shlomo Melech says, Ki pesi yamin l'chol davar, a fool believes everything, v'adam yavin, and a prudent person, means he's sharp, understands. And there's a very interesting medrash. Shlomo Melech says the pasuk, Pesi yamin l'chol davar, a fool believes everything. And a smart person understands. Okay? So the Medrash says, who is Shlomo Melech referring to when he says a fool believes everything? And the Medrash says a remarkable statement. Pesi yamin l'chol davar, zeh Moshe Rabbeinu. The Medrash says, who is Shlomo Melech referring to? When he uses the expression, a fool believes everything, he's referring to Moshe Rabbeinu. Why? Because Moshe Rabbeinu was a level of Chochmah of Atzilus. Avraham Avinu was Chesed. Yitzchak Avinu was Gvura of Atzilus. Yaakov Avinu was Tiferes of Atzilus. Therefore, Avraham served Hashem out of Ahava Avraham Oyavi. Yitzchak served Hashem out of fear, Pachad Yitzchak. And Yaakov was the level of Midas Ha'emes, Tiferes. When Moshe Rabbeinu, at the end of Parshas Shmos, at the beginning of Ha'eda, Hashem sends Moshe Rabbeinu to Mitzrayim. And he says to him, tell Parei, I'm taking you out of Mitzrayim. And Moshe Rabbeinu came to God and says, Lama Reisa Lama Zeh, God, what in the world are you doing? Made it worse. So what does Hashem tell Moshe Rabbeinu at the beginning of Ha'eda? You know, I missed the guys. Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. They never questioned. They never asked. Why did Moshe Rabbeinu ask? Because the obvious are the midas, the emotional attributes of Atzilus. Moshe Rabbeinu is the intellectual aspect of Atzilus. But even in the intellectual aspect of Atzilus, Moshe Rabbeinu was Chochmah d'Atzilus, min amaya mishisiyu. Moshe Rabbeinu came from the level of, Moshe Rabbeinu personified the level of Chochmah. Chochmah is believing. And that's why it's an interesting thing. This Parsha that we're going to read this Shabbos is Re'ei Anechi Neitzim Lefnechem Hayim. See, I'm giving you. What was last week's Parsha? V'haya Ekev Tishma'un. It will be when you will listen. What's the difference between understanding and seeing? In America, they say seeing is believing. Because seeing is not understanding something. If I see a picture, I don't necessarily understand it. I see it. When I understand it, I understand it. Seeing is believing because the level of Chochmah, because it's bittul, that's where the essential essence of God reveals itself, because Chochmah is a keli for it. And therefore, the Alter Rebbe says, that's why, no matter who the Jew is, you could be the lowest Jew, you still believe. A Jew believes, the Jews are maminim b'nei maminim. We mentioned many times, somebody once by dollars or wherever it was, came to the Rebbe and said, Rebbe, I don't believe. I don't believe. The Rebbe said to him, the fact that you say you don't believe doesn't take away from the reality that you do believe. You know why? Because the Rebbe didn't say this, but it's understood. You have a neshama. That neshama is a part of God. It doesn't matter if you don't understand. That neshama, even though you might be the lowest of lowest neshamas, you're connected to the highest neshama, the highest level of Chochmah Atzilus, which is the bittul, emunah. Emunah means there's no me. I do it with blind faith. There is no me. There's total subservience. That's the level of Chochmah. And that level, Dr. Rebbe says, every single neshama, every single Jew has. And therefore, every Jew can come closer to Hashem. Anyway, to be continued, don't forget this Shabbos from Vorchem Elul, Rosh Chodesh is Sunday and Monday. Don't forget, the Frierdiker Rebbe writes, that when Shabbos from Vorchem Elul came in the city of Lubavitch, they already felt the tshuva wind. I'm sure everybody's going to feel the tshuva wind, and Hashem should help us that we'll do tshuva. Mashiach will come immediately. We'll celebrate.
Amen. Amen.
Anyway, everybody have a good Shabbos.
Amen.
Monday night will be a class at 8:30 in Park.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care. All the best.